Have you ever wondered what it feels like when someone who once placed their entire life in your hands quietly pulls away and hands it to the person closest to you? This is my story, and I'm not telling it so anyone can forgive me. I'm telling it so I can forgive myself. Welcome to Renvenge Zinnia, where the deepest comebacks don't need to be loud to echo forever. I used to think that when people die, they leave you like a whisper in the wind. But really, the pain they leave behind, it hits like a gust straight to your face on a day when no one said a storm was coming. My name is Miranda Cole, 41 years old. I teach high school art and I've lived in Boise my whole life. 6 months ago, I lost my husband in a construction site accident. A large slab of concrete collapsed right where he was inspecting the foundation. His body was so damaged, we couldn't even have an open casket. The only thing I saw of Elliot one last time was the necklace he wore. It was found among the rubble. Everything after that felt like I wasn't a person anymore, just a label, widow. I signed cremation forms, death benefit claims, hospital releases, obituary submissions. Every task I did was automatic, like a pen stroke drawn too hard, too dark, no way to erase. My parents, Stanley and Judith, live less than 40 minutes from me. They started calling more often. My mom came by and quietly wiped down the kitchen. My dad brought over red wine, even though he knew I never drank it. For the cold, he said. For the first time in years, they started calling me our daughter instead of Renee's sister. Renee, my younger sister, arrived late to the funeral. She wore a muted lavender dress instead of black. When I saw her place flowers on Elliot's casket, I felt nothing. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. There had always been a space between us, sometimes shaped like the scholarship I got and she didn't, sometimes shaped like our parents' arms that I could never seem to squeeze into. 3 weeks after the funeral, my mom called. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "Miranda, I know it's not the best time, but your dad and I are having a rough patch financially. If you could help." I didn't even think twice. I set up a $1,500 monthly transfer. No contract, no questions, just family. Oddly, it made me feel needed. Without Elliot, I was still useful. I scaled back my work hours at school, taught part-time, mornings in class, evenings at home, knitting, baking, answering parent emails. Every time my paycheck landed, I'd send a piece of it back to my parents. For once, I wasn't the one reaching for them. They were reaching for me. I thought maybe this was a fresh start, not something joyful necessarily, but something I could control, until one Thursday morning in early spring. I was unpinning an old thank you card from my classroom board when my mom called. Her voice was unusually chipper. "Renee's pregnant. She's planning a baby shower here at the house. Said it wouldn't be right without you. You'll come, won't you?" I froze. Renee was pregnant? I remembered her hair at the funeral, thicker than usual, but I hadn't thought much of it. And why was I suddenly so important to her? Before I could ask, my mom added, "Don't forget to knit her a blanket, like the one you made for Lucy's baby last year. Renee loved that pattern." I nodded, automatically. Any color would do. I still had leftover cream yarn. That night, I sat by the window, the yellow lamplight wrapping around my hands as I knitted. Up, down, up, down. The radio was playing soft classical music in the background. I heard the faint clink of metal somewhere in the house. Subtle. Something felt off, but I didn't know how to name it. All I knew was, no blanket had ever made my skin crawl like that one. That night, I finished the last few stitches of the baby blanket. Each loop I pulled tighter than usual, like the yarn was the only thing keeping me from unraveling myself. I'd knit for students, co-workers, the neighbor's kid, but never had it felt this heavy in my hands. I even embroidered the baby's initials in the bottom corner, just like Mom asked. RS. Probably short for Renee's sweetie. I didn't ask. Honestly, I hadn't asked about Renee in years. She was like a scratch on a mirror. Small, but always right in your line of sight. On the day of the baby shower, I placed the blanket inside a wooden box lined with white fabric. I added a small handwritten card. The distance between sisters has never been short, but children are never to blame. May this keep the baby warm, even when no one's there to hold him. Miranda. I drove to my parents' house. The streets were packed. It was the weekend, but inside me, there was only silence. That kind of stillness when you know you're walking into a play where all the roles are already cast, and you're not in the script. The door opened. The smell of butter cookies and dish soap hit me first. That odd blend that always seemed to hang in the air at family gatherings. I took off my coat and barely set the gift box on the table before my mom rushed over. "Miranda, can you help set out the food on the table over there? And not too close to Renee's seat. She gets nauseous easily." No greeting. No, "How was the drive?" I smiled gently and went to work. I've always known how to make people comfortable, by staying out of their way. Renee was seated in the center of the sofa, her cream maternity dress hugging her round belly. Her nails were freshly manicured, her hair softly curled, lips painted a bright red. Around her were her college friends, the same girls who used to call me the quiet one when I'd pick Renee up from the dorms. Dad was sitting beside her, pouring her orange juice like clockwork. Mom fluffed pillows behind her back. I stood just 3 steps away, but it felt like watching through glass. "She's really grown up, huh?" Mom said proudly to a guest. "About to be a mom herself," Dad added, eyes locked on Renee's belly. No one mentioned me. No one asked how teaching was going, how my health was. No one said a word about Elliot. A man no longer living was remembered. I, the one who survived, was invisible. I poured myself a drink and walked over to the sliding glass door, staring out at the backyard. As a kid, I used to hide out there whenever Mom and Dad fought over Renee skipping school or losing money or dating the wrong guys. I was the one who wiped Mom's tears, the one who smoothed things over for Dad. But now, Renee was pregnant. And somehow, everything she'd ever done just disappeared, like it never even happened. "Miranda, picture time," Mom called, waving me into the frame. I stood beside Renee. She smiled, placing a hand on her belly. I placed mine just slightly to the side, unsure if I was even allowed to touch. Next came the ribbon belly game, baby name trivia, guess the item in the diaper bag, all eyes on Renee. She won every round. She laughed the most. I won just one game, guessing the exact circumference of her belly. A small wave of applause followed. But Renee's eyes didn't match. She looked at me, like I'd done something wrong, just by being right, just by knowing her body better than she expected anyone to. The party wrapped up. Renee picked up my gift box. She opened it, looked at the blanket, ran her fingers over the stitched initials. Her eyes paused. She didn't smile. "You made this yourself?" I nodded. "Yeah, I just think kids shouldn't be caught in adult things." Renee didn't answer, but her lips curled, not in gratitude, more like she had just completed step 1, and I, walking in with kindness, had given her the perfect handhold to push off from. I remember the exact moment Renee picked up the glass and tapped it with a silver spoon. Clink, clink, clink. The sound cut through louder than the laughter, louder than the background loop of "You Are My Sunshine" playing over the speakers. The room fell silent. Renee's friends froze mid-conversation. My parents were seated front and center. I was standing near the dessert table, still holding a plate with half a lemon tart. Renee stood in the center of the room, one hand resting on her belly, her dark brown hair draped gently over her shoulders. Her soft cream maternity dress hugged her bump like it had been tailored for this exact moment, just delicate enough to make people forget that. Something sharper might be hidden underneath. "I have something really special I want to share today." Her voice was high, sweet, polished to perfection. No stumble, no hesitation. I swallowed hard. There was a tightness in my throat that wasn't from the tart. Since I found out I was pregnant, I've kept the father's identity a secret. Part of me wanted to be sure. Part of me just wasn't ready. She scanned the room, her eyes scanning slowly, searching for the right moment to strike. Her gaze landed directly on me, and I knew. I knew before she said it. I knew before she placed a hand over her heart like she was pledging allegiance to her own twisted version of the truth. The father is Elliot. No one said a word, a silence so heavy, even the ceiling fan seemed to pause. Elliot, my husband, the man who died 6 months ago, the man who held me at night for over a decade, the man whose ashes I carried home, placing his old necklace around the urn like a final act of love. My father didn't flinch. My mother blinked twice, then nodded. No shock. No, what did you just say? No, are you serious? I stepped back. The plate slipped from my hand, landing on the carpet. It didn't break, just sent a few crumbs flying onto my shoes. Renee kept talking. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. We were together before he passed. He was planning to leave Miranda. This baby is his only son, his rightful heir. My hand trembled. I gripped the nearest table for balance. Not from rage, but because the entire foundation of my life, past, present, every memory of Elliot, had just been set on fire, right there in a room decorated with pastel balloons. Renee pulled out her phone, waved it lightly. If anyone has doubts, she can confirm. She held up the screen. First photo, her and Elliot at a diner I'd never been to. Second, a hotel. One Elliot had said was for a business trip, where they posed like a couple on a weekend getaway. Text messages. I caught a glimpse of one. I don't love her anymore. Every eye in the room turned toward me. No one moved. No one asked if I was okay. My mom spoke first. Miranda, please, stay calm. That baby is family. My dad followed, voice low and formal, like reciting a will. This child has rights. He's Elliot's legal legacy. I don't remember how I got out of the house, just the sound of the car door slamming, the way I was gasping for air like my lungs had forgotten how to breathe. The blanket, the one I knit with my hands, my time, my quiet hope of mending, was now clutched in the hands of the woman who just announced that my husband was the father of her child. And I realized it wasn't just Elliot who betrayed me. I'd been betrayed by my own blood, and by the same people I'd been sending money to every month because I still believed family means something. That night, I didn't sleep. I left the kitchen light on, brewed 3 pots of tea, and didn't drink a single cup. I opened my laptop, scrolling through old photo folders. There was one picture I had never looked at too closely. Elliot sitting in a cafe, the reflection on the table revealing the silhouette of someone with dark brown hair behind the camera. I opened our old credit card statements. The work trips he claimed? Hotel charges on Renee's birthday? I dug through old emails. He'd printed flight tickets instead of forwarding them, hotels that didn't match the company's usual bookings. I sat like that from 1 a.m. to 4:23 a.m. I typed into the search bar, Renee Cole plus paternity rights. An old article popped up. Rise in estate disputes as paternity laws favor children born out of wedlock. At exactly 6:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Renee. You can fight me, but you can't fight Elliot's child. I'll see you in court if that's what you want. An hour later, my mother called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I played it back, her voice so low it sounded like a whispered confession. Miranda, don't escalate this. That baby, it's family. Elliot's gone, but Renee and the baby are all we have left. I laughed. For the first time in months, I laughed. Out loud. Family? What family? I called the bank, asked them to cancel the automatic transfers to my parents' account. The woman on the line, Julie, asked politely, "Would you like us to save the setup in case you reactivate later?" I replied, No, if I ever reactivate it, I've lost my mind. I wandered through the house like someone guarding a crime scene. I looked at the painting of Elliot on the wall, the one I had painted for him as a wedding gift. Now it just looked like a memorial portrait. I took it down, flipped it over. I had written on the back in silver ink, "This is home." I placed the painting in a drawer, closed it. The next day, I received a thick envelope from a law office. Renee's name printed clearly as plaintiff. Inside, a formal claim to Elliot's estate, including the house I lived in, the downtown apartment we rented out, and a joint savings account with both our names on it. Renee was filing on behalf of her unborn child. I read it over and over. I had to highlight parts just to process them. The one line that made me go still. The plaintiff has sufficient reason to believe the child is the biological offspring of the deceased and is the sole legally recognized heir. I called my father. My mother picked up. I asked directly, "You both knew, didn't you?" Silence. Then her voice cracked, like someone trying to hold on to decency when the ropes already snapped. "We don't choose who we love, Miranda. Elliot, maybe he was wrong, but he was still part of this family." I didn't say another word. I hung up. That day, I sealed every lock, changed every password, revoked every shared access. I wasn't part of that family anymore. I owed them nothing. Not my money, not my silence, not my role as the understanding one. The only thing I'd ever shared with them was love. They turned it into an asset. And I realized something. This house? I paid for it in trust. Now they were coming for it. With lawyers. 4 days later, I officially became the defendant. The petition came by certified mail, postmarked from a law office in Twin Falls. I sat on the porch, a mug of chamomile tea still steaming beside me, flipping through the pages, thick, crisp, cold. Plaintiff, Renee Cole, on behalf of her unborn son, tentative name, Elliot Cole Jr. Defendant, Miranda Cole, legal wife of the late Elliot Cole. I was used to my name coming after his. This time, my name came after an unborn fetus, and he had more legal rights than I did. Renee demanded a division of 3 assets: the suburban home I currently lived in, the downtown apartment. We once planned to turn it into an art studio for weekend workshops, our entire joint savings account. Her claim? That the unborn child was the only surviving legally recognized heir of Elliot and entitled to at least 50% of his estate under intestate succession laws. Elliot left no will. We thought we had time. He was only 44. I was 41. We hadn't even talked about retirement, let alone death. A week later, I met with a lawyer, Declan Fierro, 38, the only man in the office wearing rubber soles and brewing espresso for his clients. He flipped through my file, glasses on, skimming lines like he was reviewing a used car contract. "Ms. Cole, I'll be honest. Cases like this, not rare, but this one's unique because of the element of post-marital trust." "Meaning?" I asked. "Meaning, if the plaintiff can prove there was a real romantic relationship, overlapping timeline, evidence, and witnesses, courts tend to lean toward protecting the child." I let out a cold laugh. "So what you're saying is, a baby who hasn't even been born yet has more legal standing than the woman who spent 10 years as this man's wife?" Declan didn't answer. He handed me a folder. Photos, text, statements. Some I had seen at the baby shower. Others were new. Hiking trips and matching jackets. A video of Elliot strumming a guitar while Renee laughed beside him. I asked, "How did she get all this?" "Someone gave it to her." I nodded, closed my eyes. Part of me didn't want to know more, but I still asked, "Who's listed as witnesses for the plaintiff?" Declan paused, then flipped the sheet over. First name, Judith Cole. Second name, Stanley Cole. My mother, my father, they didn't just know, they chose her side. They signed statements saying they had witnessed the emotional bond between Elliot and Renee prior to his passing and believed it to be genuine love. I didn't cry, but I felt the heat rise up the back of my neck, like I was standing in a burning building. And the person who called the fire department was the same one who poured the gasoline. "Do you want to counter, Sue?" Declan asked. I looked at him. "I want to know. Is there any way to prove Elliot isn't the father?" He tilted his head. "Do you have reason to doubt?" I didn't answer, but a voice echoed in my head. Not my own voice, a different one. The voice from the voicemail last week. Steady, clear, no frills. "This is Fern Laramie, Elliot's biological mother. There's something you need to know." I used to believe Elliot was an orphan. I used to believe I knew everything about him. Now, I knew I never would. But if there was anyone alive who had known him before I did, I would find them. Even if I had to dig through a graveyard of memories just to uncover one final truth, I was ready. The phone rang around 7 p.m., an unknown number. I almost let it go, but my finger slipped and answered. "Is this Miranda Cole?" A woman's voice, steady, clear, no hesitation. "Yes, this is Fern Laramie, Elliot's biological mother." I froze in the hallway. It felt like my whole body had been drained of blood. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Elliot had told me back in our first year together. "I'm an orphan. Lost both my parents in a car crash when I was 10. Grew up in the foster system." I never questioned it. Never pried. I thought, people who've lost everything deserve silence. So who was this woman? "I have something you need, and I don't believe he would have wanted that girl to take everything." We arranged to meet the next morning at an old cafe near the city library, the same one I used to take my students for outdoor sketching. I arrived early, chose the last booth. My hands were cold, even though the sun was out. She walked in right on time, long brown coat, gray hair pulled back high. She carried herself like someone who had once been a military nurse, and the moment she raised her head, I saw Elliot. The way she tilted it, the deep brown eyes rimmed with light, the downturned arch of her brows. It was like watching him step out from another life. She sat down, ordered black coffee. I asked her straight out, "Why now?" She smiled gently, unapologetic. "I was at the funeral, sat in the last row. No one noticed me. I didn't want to intrude. Elliot and I hadn't spoken in 11 years. Why? Because I told the truth, and he didn't want to hear it." She reached into her bag and pulled out a large manila envelope, placed it on the table. "These are Elliot's medical records, originals, from a clinic in Oregon when he was 27. I froze, opened it. First page, diagnosis, azoospermia, complete infertility. Cause, irreversible testicular trauma from a severe sports injury at age 19. Natural reproduction, none, no recovery possible. Below that, a red official seal, doctor's signature. Date, everything in order. I could hear the wind brushing against the cafe window, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a crack of light. He hid it from you, from everyone. But if no one speaks, you'll be buried alive with that girl's lie. I looked at her, eyes still on the documents. "Would you be willing to testify?" She nodded, slow, firm. "I lost my son, but I'm not letting anyone exploit his name again." We sat in silence a while longer. I folded the documents, placed them in my bag, and for the first time in weeks, my hands weren't shaking. I stood up. "Thank you for not staying silent like the rest of the world." She gave a small smile. "Silence keeps people clean, but not everyone lives clean enough to stay quiet." I stepped out of the cafe. The morning breeze cut across my face. I took a deep breath. I used to think I had nothing left, but now I had a voice the world tried to erase from Elliot's life, and it was pointing me toward a counterstrike. I brought Elliot's medical records home and placed them on the table like something fragile, carefully, without emotion. I didn't touch them right away. I let them sit there, made tea, watered the plants, cleaned out a drawer. Only then did I come back to it, as if I had to earn the right to reread the truth. The diagnosis confirmed: complete infertility, age 27, doctor's signature, official red stamp from the Oregon clinic. That was the exact year Elliot and I started dating. I remembered the first time we talked about kids, our second year living together. I was folding laundry and I asked, just offhand, if we ever had a boy, what would you want to name him? Elliot laughed. Doesn't matter, as long as he's nothing like me. I laughed too. Didn't think twice. He never asked me what name I'd choose. We never brought it up again. In our fourth year, I started infertility treatments, hormone panels, ultrasounds, tube tests, blood work. Elliot kept saying he was swamped with site visits, work deadlines. So I went alone. I was the one taking pills, injecting hormones, charting basal temps at dawn. He held me after each failed cycle, but never once showed up to an appointment. "You're stronger than me," he once said. "Maybe I'm too weak to step into a hospital." I believed him. Now I know the truth. It wasn't fear. It was certainty. He knew. He let me run myself ragged on a treadmill to nowhere, because if I ever found out he was infertile, I'd ask the next question: why did he lie? And that would have led not just to a diagnosis, but to the erasure of a person. The woman who gave him life, and who he cut out of his own. I pulled up an old email, a message from Elliot sent 2 years ago while on a business trip. I ran into an old acquaintance, Fern. Used to be a nurse, helped me back in college. Still the same, thorough and hard to talk to. Made me think, if I ever have kids, I'd never let them lose touch with family. At the time, I skimmed it. Now I read it again. Fern wasn't an acquaintance. She was his mother, and never lose touch with family wasn't a promise. It was the regret of someone who had done just that. I went down to the basement, pulled out an old storage box, found our old film camera. Inside, one undeveloped roll. I took it to a photo lab. 3 days later, I got the prints back. One photo showed Elliot by the ocean, reflected in the lens of his sunglasses, Renee's hand holding the camera. Another, Elliot with a glass of red wine, standing in a room I didn't recognize. Not our home, not our apartment. Every image, a confession without a single word. I started collecting everything: the photos, the medical records, the bank statements, the letters. I bought a new file box, labeled it Truth. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in weeks, a single page, one line. I didn't lose a husband. I lost a mirage dressed as a decent man. The next morning, I called Declan Fierro. I have evidence. I have a witness. I'm ready to take this all the way. He asked, "How do you want to begin?" I didn't hesitate. With the voice of the woman they erased, and the silence of those who screamed justice for a child not even born yet. The courtroom wasn't large, but it was so quiet I could hear the soles of my shoes click against the floor with every step. I wore a light gray blazer, no lipstick, no necklace, just a single document folder in my hand. Fern walked beside me, deep brown coat, gray hair pulled back tight, face steady. Like a mother who never got the chance to cry enough for her son. Renee was already there. Her pregnancy was unmistakable. Tight dress, flawless makeup, soft curls pinned just right. Sitting next to her was her attorney, a smooth-faced man with thick glasses and eyes that revealed nothing. My parents sat behind her. Neither of them turned to look at me. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and a petite frame, watched us with an intensity that seemed to slice right through bone. Renee began with a rehearsed opening statement. I only want what's rightfully my child's. My son is the only one born of the deceased Elliot Cole. We loved each other. He planned to leave that marriage. His sudden death cut those plans short. But the legacy he left behind is a child. I'm here to protect that child's rights." I didn't react. I simply nodded at Declan Fierro. He stood, his voice calm. "Your Honor, we are not here to diminish the worth of a child, but we have evidence that this child is not and cannot be the biological son of the deceased." The room stilled. Declan raised the folder. "These are medical records from a certified urology clinic in Oregon, documenting Mr. Elliot Cole's fertility diagnosis. The conclusion: complete azoospermia. No sperm present, no natural conception possible. Diagnosis established at age 27, irreversible." Renee jumped to her feet. "That's fake. They forged those records to steal from my baby." The judge raised her hand, signaling silence. Declan continued, unshaken. "We have a witness to verify the authenticity of the file, Mrs. Fern Laramie, biological mother of Mr. Cole, and the person listed as his medical proxy at the time of diagnosis." Fern stepped forward, presented her ID, confirmed her identity and her relationship. Her voice didn't rise, but it struck the room like metal on glass. "I gave birth to him. I watched him grieve the loss of fatherhood. I kept this record because I knew one day I'd need to protect his name from being used." The judge paused, then brought down the gavel. "This court orders a DNA test to determine paternity between the unborn child and Mr. Elliot Cole. Proceedings are adjourned until results are available." Renee collapsed into her seat. Her face was pale. My mother rose, stepped forward, and placed a hand on Renee's shoulder, as if shielding her from the collapse. I looked at her, not with anger, just a clean, precise cut. 3 weeks later, the DNA results came in. The court reconvened. The air felt like the moment before a storm breaks. The judge opened the sealed envelope, read in silence, then lifted her eyes. "The child has no biological relation to Mr. Elliot Cole. Does the plaintiff have anything to say before the court?" Renee swayed. Her lips trembled. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for someone to rescue her from the truth. No one moved. Finally, she whispered, like a confession with no direction. I don't know for sure. There might have been more than one. I thought Elliot was the only one." The judge cut in, voice sharp. "You fabricated a false claim of inheritance, lied under oath, presented misleading witnesses. You used an unborn child as a tool to seize assets. Do you understand the legal consequences of your actions?" Renee broke down. No one comforted her, not even my parents, who had once stood behind her, now sat in bowed silence. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt weight lift from my chest. A pressure I'd carried for months. No screaming, no public shaming, just the truth, delivered in the right hands, at the right time, was enough to crush a lie built from 9 months of pregnancy and 6 months of legal calculation. And I, the woman once deemed too quiet, too soft, too trusting, had just shattered it all with nothing more than composure. 3 days after the hearing, I got a message from my parents' old landline. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry. Your mom's been crying. Renee is gone. We don't know how to handle the baby. If you see this message, please think about the child. He's innocent." I read it, set the phone on the table, didn't respond, didn't move. My heart felt like a frozen lake, slick, still, and too solid for anything to sink into. Renee had left town. Rumor had it she was living with a man she dated before Elliot. The baby, already born, was named Jonas, a name with no connection to Elliot, but my parents still introduced him as Elliot Cole's grandson. I took a walk through the old neighborhood, the one I'd grown up in. The house was still standing, but moss had crept up the back fence. The swing set was splintered, nearly snapped through by termites. I stared, but the memories felt like they belonged to someone else's life. I remembered the money I used to send, $1,500 every month, 15 months, $22,500 in exchange for a few fake dinners, a few strained, keep talking sweetheart moments, before the conversation always shifted back to Renee. I opened my banking app, went to history. The last transfer sat at the top. Recurring transfer, $1,500, recipient Stanley and Judith Cole. Memo, family is the most important thing. I tapped cancel forever, not pause, not review later, forever. I packed up the downtown apartment, the one Elliot once called our second nest. I cleared every drawer, changed the locks, hired a lawyer to rewrite the deed, scrubbing every trace of the in-laws off the record. The suburban house, the one Elliot and I lived in for 10 years, I left with a real estate agency. No listing, no price tag, just empty. The place we once called home, no one left deserves to live there now. I rented a small apartment, white walls, pale wood floors. I hung just one frame on the wall, not our wedding photo, not one of my paintings I'd made for Elliot, just a scan, blown up, of the words I wrote in my journal that day. I didn't lose a husband. I lost an illusion dressed as kindness. Then came a letter from my mother, handwritten, trembling pen strokes on yellowed paper. I don't expect you to forgive me, but if you care about the baby, please think of helping him. He has no one. He's your nephew, Miranda. He needs someone stable. I didn't open the letter. I slid it back in the envelope, sealed it shut, and tucked it into the freezer, between frozen meat and ice packs. Maybe I'll read it someday, or maybe it'll stay there until the day I sell the fridge. I didn't choose revenge. I simply chose to stop being the one who pays, not with money, not with trust, not with the endless effort to earn a place in a family. I used to send money because I thought being a good daughter meant covering their bills. Now I've sent my last wire and realized they never needed it as much as I needed to believe they did. I moved into my new apartment on the first snow of the season. Light flurries, quiet streets, the kind of cold that didn't feel sharp, just clean. For the first time in over a year, I hung a painting without hesitation. It wasn't Elliot's portrait. It wasn't our wedding photo. It was a charcoal drawing. A woman sitting by a windowsill holding an empty frame in her lap. No face, no name. Just a soft outline of light around her shoulders. I'd sketched it one quiet night, after closing the last joint bank account. The painting didn't need to be understood. It was for me. Fern called every Monday evening. We talked about ordinary things, new teas, books we were reading, her latest blood pressure check, the color palette I was mixing for my next canvas. One week she asked, "How's that baby doing?" I answered, "My sister sent him to live with my mother." For now. We never used names. We didn't need to. Silence, too, is a kind of language. I reopened my weekend art class at the local community center. My first student was a 10-year-old girl named Violet. Warm skin, wide eyes, always stealing glances when she thought I wasn't looking. One day she asked, "Have you ever drawn someone you loved, but couldn't forgive?" I paused, then said, "I have." But I didn't keep the painting, because loving without forgiving is just framing your pain. She nodded, smiled, then went back to mixing her colors. Fern and I started a small scholarship fund. With what was left after the lawsuit, we called it Blank Frame Fund, for those who've been erased from the picture, but still want to draw themselves back in. No mention of Elliot, no photos, just one line beneath the title. For those who were left out of the frame, but still believe in painting themselves in. One quiet Sunday, I visited the cemetery. I brought white paint and traced the letters back over the cold gray stone. Elliot Cole, 1979 to 2024. No one gets to paint you as someone you were not. I didn't cry. I placed my hand on the stone. It was cold, but it no longer numbed me. As I walked away, a boy on a bicycle passed by. He glanced back at me. I didn't look at him thinking of Jonas, but thinking of all the children who will grow up one day and ask, "Who am I if my father wasn't the man my mother said he was?" And I hope someone like me, someone like Fern, will be there to answer calmly, "You don't need an inheritance to know you're worth something." I have an old brown leather notebook, the only thing I didn't leave behind when I moved out. Back when I was living with Elliot, I used it to track monthly expenses: electric bill, gas, flowers for Mom's birthday, money sent to Dad, my students' class fund. Each line ended with a little note: because I'm the wife, because I'm the daughter, because I'm the one who can carry it. I never once wrote, because I want to. That night, in my new apartment, with my desk lamp casting a soft shadow on the wall, I turned to the notebook's final page. One old line stood out: last transfer, $1,500. Reason: because I thought I was a good daughter. I took a black pen and crossed it out. Not erased, not torn. I wanted it to stay there, like an old ink stain on the palm, a reminder that I once lived by roles no one asked me to play, but I forced on myself anyway. Then I flipped to a blank page, wrote in blue ink, Day 1, living without writing anyone else's name but my own. I closed the notebook, and this time, I didn't tuck it away in a drawer. I left it on the table between an empty picture frame and a vase of dried lavender. Things that didn't need daily tending yet still held their shape, because they didn't need anyone's permission to exist. Next week, I'll teach my first art class at the public library. The theme is Self-Portrait Without a Mirror. Each student will draw themselves from memory. No mirror, no photo, just from within. I think I'll draw myself as a woman with short hair, holding a notebook, standing against a blank background. No name tag, no connections, no need for bloodline or legacy to justify her presence. I used to think that if I was kind enough, they would choose me. But kindness shouldn't be a strategy to be chosen. Kindness should be how I choose myself and walk forward without waiting for anyone to follow.